Mark, do you want to talk about the testing session a little bit? I know you kind of mentioned it a little while ago, but
Yeah,
there's a
sure.
lot more people on that.
Sure. We had the test session this past Saturday. It was two sessions, one at 9, one at 10:30, and the 9 o'clock one was more of a makeup session for the session that had got canceled the 2 weeks previous because of the freeze. So we still filled both sessions with all the available seats. The community center only allows us 16 seats in the room that we're in. And so I can only have like 12 or 13 candidates for each session so to maintain the room limitation. But we had a total of 24 candidates. We did have one fella who came in without a license and walked out with an extra. And that's not that uncommon. It does happen. You know, I've seen it happen 2-3 times a year. We had several general upgrades, and in fact, Scott is here tonight to attest to that, and KI5 NPL. And we had a bunch of techs, probably the majority, probably about 18 to 20 of the candidates were techs, new techs. ARRL was very responsive when we sent everything in online, uploading it, and got everything into the FCC database by Tuesday. So testing on Saturday, new licenses on Tuesday. So we've streamlined the system with the ARRL on their fellows, and they come back to me if they have an issue with something, they can't read something or whatever. And we did have that and sorted it out in a few hours. And again, kudos to the guys down in Newington for all the work that they do. And kind of saying that for benefit of Mr. Stratton, because they really do good work down there. Next session is on April 10th. I already have about half a dozen people signed up for that. Currently, it's one session at 10:30. If we do run overflow on that, we will go to 2 sessions, but things are starting to reopen, so we're not the only game in town. We were that way for about a month, and so we had a lot of people coming in. But leave it as it is. If you know anyone that wants to take a test, check the ARRL site or contact me.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mark. Dave, you want to do a treasury report?
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I can. I wasn't prepared for it, but let me go ahead. I'll tell you what, let me go find the file and then you can call me in just a little bit.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Jeff, do we have any new members we need to announce or anything?
We have a few new members. We don't typically announce them in the meetings, and I don't have a list in front of me. So,
okay.
But we've had a few join. We got a good number from Mark's test sessions, and we've also had folks that have found their way to us, typically through the Stir Crazy Net or word of mouth. So.
Okay, well, good. I know we've had a couple of new nets kick up on the 9.4 machine, so things have been going pretty good there, I think. Does anybody else have any other announcements that they need to bring up?
Yeah, this is Mark again, K5MGJ. We are going to try and schedule a work session down at the ships. We are going to have museum ships in June. We're already signed up for that. So look for that announcement, and I'll be looking for volunteers to come down to Galveston with me.
Okay. Anybody else have any announcements?
Sherry's not here, but she'd want me to mention the new Monday night traffic net on the 9.4 machine. I know it's on the 9.4 machine, and it's a traffic handling net dealing with radiograms and whatnot, but I don't know what time it is. Does anybody know what time Monday night that happens?
6:30 every Monday night from 6:30 to 7:30 on the 9.4 machine.
Thank you very much. Jimmy, back to you.
Okay. Well, I'll check one more time. Is there any other announcements before we turn it over to John?
Yeah, I'll just throw out a plug for the Houston area Simplex Net. We're going to continue next Thursday, as we have the last two Thursdays. We're taking the night off.
Right. Okay, and with that being said, I'll turn it over to you, John. You've got the floor. Tonight's guest is John Robert Stratton. He's our West Gulf ARL Division Director.
Jimmy, thanks. Everyone, thanks for inviting me. I've also shanghaied the Vice Director for West Gulf, Lee Cooper. Lee, wave. Lee's going to answer the hard questions. I'll take the easy ones. We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. There's some things I'm going to go through trying to bring you up to date on what the league is doing. Stop me or Lee at any time and ask any question about anything. There's nothing formal about what we're doing. Answering questions is more fun anyway, just listening to me talk. But I wanted to say thank you for the compliments on headquarters on the testing. We have been, since 2006, trying to improve the efficiency of the VE program. The league is one of 14 VECs. We're the largest. But our software and operational procedures are somewhat behind. It's a major project at the league right now to make the entire operation fully electronic. There is one group, Laurel, out of the East Coast that has a fully electronic VE program. We hope to have that done by the end of the year and try and make it fully electronic. But thank you for the compliments. The people at headquarters, most of them at least, do work very hard. Since COVID showed up, we've been running at 50% occupancy. We couldn't put any more people in the building. Initially, for the first, what was the league, 3 months, 4 months, we were closed. Everyone working at the league worked from home. We had to go buy a bunch of laptops because a lot of the people up north didn't have laptops. So we had to buy laptops for the employees so they could work from home. But Connecticut just lifted the restrictions this last week. We think it will let us put all the employees back in the building. We won't know until I think next week, but thank you for the compliments because they do try. Mike was telling me that the club has 200, Jimmy, if I'm right, 75 members now. Is that pretty close?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
That makes BVARC one of the, you're in the top 10 in Texas. There are 2 or 3 Dallas clubs. They have 285. They're competing. They're trying to get to 300, but no one's made it yet. And Mike was saying that the club, your club, is trying to get to 300 by the end of this year. And you've got, I believe, 175 ARL members. The league itself now has 159,984 members. That means that I think we're the size of Pasadena, Texas now, total membership around the country. We picked up 1,100 new members in the past 2 months. With COVID going away, there's a renewed interest in amateur radio. It started when everyone was cooped up and they had to do something, so they decided to learn to get their license. Now we're picking up members. Our target's 200,000. If we get to 200,000, we're the size of Bryan and College Station. You may wonder why I compare us to cities, because think about it. We have the largest block of free frequencies in the country, in fact, in the world, of a town or a city, which makes it extremely important for the league to. She may be better than I am at talking. But the biggest thing the league does is spectrum defense. There are a lot of national amateur radio associations around the world. We are the most powerful one that exists. The entire world looks at us, watches what we do. We're the most influential nationally in terms of allocating frequencies for amateur radio. As some of you saw on the fight over 3.3 to 3.5 that was taken away from us for 5 gig. If the league didn't exist, all the frequencies would be gone within about 3 years. because everyone wants what we have. Everyone thinks no one will touch HF. There are people who've been trying to ease into the HF bands that we have. So far, we've been better protecting those. But people ask, why do you want to be a member of the league? I think someone was discussing that earlier. They don't want to join the league or join your club. The reason to join is that the league keeps amateur radio alive. It provides benefits to members, and we can go down that list anytime, but the key thing we do is spectrum defense. And a lot of what we do is never seen. It's behind the scenes. Mike was talking about our being busy. We have three main committees: the executive committee, administration and finance, that handles obviously finance and money, and programs and services. And when the executive committee meets, it's an elected committee. The board elects that committee. One of the principal things we deal with in the meeting, probably half the meeting, is how are we going to defend against applications to use our frequencies? A university wants to use it, GE wants to use it, Ford wants to use part of the frequencies for communications between cars. It's a constant fight. And you know, we got a spectrum defense fund. All that money goes to those efforts. So for those who aren't members, it's not just a magazine, it's keeping the hobby alive. If anyone joins the league by joining the club and then joining through the club, joining the league, BVARC gets $2 if you're already an existing ARRL member. If someone who is not a member of the league joins through BVARC, BVARC gets $15 for that member. $2 isn't much money, but we're trying to improve that. We've been working on it for several years to try and increase the amount the club gets. So if you've got people who you've talked into joining the league, get them to join to the club. Right now, registering the fact that Keith decided to join the league and did it through the club is a difficult thing to do. Our website doesn't work well, the reporting doesn't work well. We're working on making it easy for the club to just come online, give us a list of new members, and the club will get credit for it. And as part of that, since we can't be there at the club meeting, which would be more fun, what we're going to do, since we can't hand out door prizes, we're going to, what we've started doing in the meetings is giving out door prizes a different way. Anyone who renews their membership in the league through the club, and if you do it through us, it'll be automatic through the club, or any new members that join, we'll get door prizes. Lee and I will send them out to you within the next week or so. If you renew your membership, even if you've already got a membership, when you renew it, it just tacks on. So after Lee and I are gone, y'all can talk about it, but anyone who renews their membership between now and next Friday and tells us about it, we'll ship a prize to you. If you renew for 3 years, you get 2 prizes. One of them is a date with Lee, but you'll just have to decide if that's important. But Jimmy, can I bring the screen up for a second? Can I share the screen?
Yeah, sure. I think you should have permission to do that.
Okay. Let's see if that came up. That just tells us who we are. And let me go through this a second because I want to show you what the emails are. If someone renews and you send an email, send it to one of these 2 email addresses. Use the subject line BVARC membership. That's all you need, and give us your name, address, and a copy of the renewal page from the league, and we'll take care of getting the door prizes to you. And like I said, and we'll promise really you won't have to get a date with Lee. We'll try and get rid of that. Again, you can stop us anytime you've got questions. The league has been changing over the past year. In 2019, 1/3 of the board was replaced. A year after that, we replaced the existing CEO, Dr. Nickel. We spent all of last year looking for a new CEO. As most of you know, Dave Sumner was CEO for, I think, 300 years. He retired in 2016. The first CEO we had, Tom Gallagher, did not work out. We hired Dr. Nickel. He did not work out. So we made a much more intense effort to find a CEO that might work out. The result is we hired David Minster, NA2AA. He's out of New Jersey. And no, those of us in the South don't forgive him for that, but he's working out. He's very enthusiastic. He's very active in both MCOM and DX and contesting. He has started working on programs that have been dead for years. We think he's going to work out pretty well. We will have him at a meeting sometime later in the spring, but he's actually on another meeting tonight, so we couldn't bring him. As a result of getting a new CEO, we're starting to bring a lot of new programs online to benefit clubs. Starting in the summer of 2019, after meeting with a lot of clubs around the state, what became apparent was that you and the other clubs don't have enough support from headquarters. The clubs have been ignored by headquarters up until now for decades. There used to be a lot of programs the league would have for you. They would help you recruit members, give you training programs for new members. Those died. That's going to come back because in 2019, at my request, the board created a new staff position called National Club Coordinator. That person's job is to work with the clubs and develop new programs, recruit materials, whatever you need. So there will be an outreach from that person to all the clubs around the country, trying to find out what do you want, what can we help you with? And the league can put a lot of resources into it. One other thing's been ignored for, what, Lee, 20 years, is MCOM. In any given, we have 3 committees that meet and handle all the business. Like I said, Administration and Finance, Programs and Services, and Executive Committee. Programs and Services were supposed to handle everything, including MCOM. Lee, what was it every time PSC met? They spent 5 minutes out of 2 hours talking about MCOM and NTS?
If we were lucky.
If you're lucky. That's not beneficial to Aries and NTS. So a group of us, what I call the directors from the danger zone, everyone along the Gulf Coast, organized, and we did 2 things. One, we persuaded the board to create a new position, Director of Emergency Management. We spent, last year when we were looking for a CEO, we also looked to hire a Director of Emergency Management. The person we hired was Paul Gilbert, former South Texas Section Manager. And Paul started last fall. In addition to that, to provide support for him, we created a committee called the Emergency Management Committee. That committee will be solely responsible after the July board meeting for all the field service for the National Traffic System and for Aries. And with the result that there'll be a lot more focus and support for both of those. Lee's been very instrumental in that because Lee wrote the training manual for the West Gulf that was used for Aries. And that was adopted by Tennessee, and who else adopted it, Lee?
Oh, and Tennessee picked up on it. Georgia picked up on it. Iowa picked up on it. There were a couple other queries on that were very interested.
And I'll let Lee talk about the importance of the training program nationally in a minute when we get to it. But that committee is going to be responsible for helping not so much restart, but reinforce the importance of Aries around the country. I do a lot of legislative work for the league, both in Texas and in Congress, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But when we go in to talk to a congressman or a state senator or a state rep, most of them don't know much about amateur radio, but what they do know is that everyone here on this screen, they identify as someone who is responsible for helping the state when it hits the fan. The phrase we use for so many years, when all else fails, they understand exactly what that means. They may not know what else we do, but they do know that, what was the language the National Weather Service uses? National Weather Service, every time we go to Congress or go to the state Senate, the state house, they give us a letter that says, amateur radio saves lives. That's what they know. If whether you're interested in DXing or contesting or just making fun of Jimmy and Mike, Aries keeps amateur radio, not Aries so much, but MCOM keeps us alive. If you look at why we exist, if you look at the statute, one of the 4 reasons we exist is to provide emergency communications. If we ever cease providing it nationally, then the reason we exist will go away. Yes, it's neat that we have the frequencies. It's neat that we train people to be radio operators, but MCOM's the key. And we've ignored it for so long that we've got to get back and make it more important. So that you'll hear more about the committee after July.
I have a question on that.
Yes, sir.
I'm the South Texas section traffic manager.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm real interested in increasing the cooperation between various Aries organizations and the NTS. And I'd like to see a focus from the league on doing exactly that.
Bud Hipsley is chairman of the EMD committee. He's the director for the Roanoke division, which is the Carolinas. He is a big traffic system operator. That is one of the top 5 things this committee is going to focus on, is establishing and improving the links between Aries and NTS.
Thank you, sir.
That's been ignored. Again, they ignored Aries. They ignored NTS for 20 years. But
that's exactly right. With predictable results, therefore, right? Because I work with RRI also because I have to, right?
RRI will probably continue to exist.
I don't mind that. I just want to make sure that we all work together to do everything sensible. Does that make sense?
No, that's where we want to go. It is sensible. And RRI is not hostile to the league. And anyone wants to know the story about why RRI exists, we can go into that, but I won't unless you ask. But okay. RRI is tickled to work with NTS. From what we've seen nationally, if there's a need for a traffic net, there's no distinction between RRI and NTS. All the nets work together.
Amen.
Go ahead, sir.
That's exactly right. That's my experience as well. And I think that if we could get the Aries link up better and nationally focused, I guess you'd say. It's not that there aren't links, it's that they're not nationally focused. Does that make sense?
It does. And Lee and Paul were working on that before Paul became Director of Emergency Management. Lee is still working on that as part of the EMD committee.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
One of the things that we've been looking at is what programs or assets have been tasked for Aries use. A number of years ago, the gentleman who was in charge, well, he had the title of being responsible for emergency management. He and a group of others who knew nothing about emergency communications or Aries decided that they were going to buy a program called Aries Connect and forced it upon Aries. I think Lee, in Texas, only 2 counties use Aries Connect now.
In Texas?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe. County? Yeah, I guess counties.
2 out of 254. If you were sitting in a meeting of directors and go, how many of you have people using Aries Connect? Everybody in the room would raise their hand. The program doesn't do what it was intended to do. It doesn't do what we want. And Lee and Paul have been working on finding a replacement for it. Lee, why don't you tell everyone what's happened so far with Aries Connect, how the decision was made to get rid of it, and what you and your subcommittee are working on. The EMD committee has a subcommittee, and Lee is the chairman of the subcommittee that's working on this.
Thank you, John. And so let me just say, yeah, that's the first thing. I want to kind of reiterate that you're right. Since last year, we've started to see finally that Aries is not this step-headed, what is that, redheaded stepchild, black guy? Anyway, we got no support. Like I said, we got lucky. We got 2 minutes of time up there to do that. There's a lot of things that occurred, but nothing that was really beneficial. Aries Connect was brought in to the organization for one reason only, the way it was sold. And that was that the people up in Connecticut said that if you turned in your time through the SEC, through Jeff Walter, that they didn't have a way of telling what state or what county it was. Otherwise, they couldn't tell if it was Harris County, Texas, or Harris County, Pennsylvania, or Harris County, Wyoming. Somehow or other, they weren't able to do that. So they went out and they bought this massive volunteer tracking system to put in place. The problem is the process was flawed. It was way too complicated. People didn't like it, didn't want to use it. Those who did use it, we had to sit there and manipulate all the data on the back end for them anyway, because it wouldn't do the reporting we wanted. And the vendors were not willing to sit there and modify it, or some cases they said they weren't even able to modify it based on the platform they use to allow us to do any type of reporting or queries. And so we're putting a lot of money into a program that nationally, now Hawaii was probably being using less than 0.5% of the total amount of counties out there. So one of the first things that John said with our new MCOM committee that we kind of started up is we sat down and we did a review. We reached out to a lot of you that are ECs and to the section managers and to the SECs, and we got some feedback. And we essentially found that pretty much the thing was not being used and wasn't really appreciated. So we decided that perhaps we should cut our losses and then look for streamlining the current process using the Form 4 that you guys use Form 2 if you're an EC to Form 4, and just update that a little bit and then see where we go from there to do that. So it's the program sat there. It's basically language for a couple of years. We spent money on it. We tried to modify it. One of the people up at headquarters said, well, in 4 or 5 years, we should be able to get it where we want. And we weren't willing to wait 4 or 5 years to do so. So it was decided that that we would go away. And what we're doing in the meantime, most of you would not even be impacted or even aware of this. What we're doing is basically the online forms that you fill out if you go now to the website. Well, you guys got the depot. Those of you who are using the depot, Judy's already back in automated. What basically we're doing is we're taking what Judy has done with the depot and we're going to try to move it over into a national point of view, so we have a real back end, a real database, and the ability to do some real queries and use of the data and stuff. That's one of the main priorities that we're working with Paul on to sit here and do that. And there's one of maybe 4 or 5 key things we've identified that just have to be fixed to do that. By the way, John, I'll jump real quick. I don't, Ron is there. If you remember last October, by the way, Mars and NTS and RRI did a joint exercise, a joint national exercise and stuff to do some testing and do some responses and stuff. That's one of the first group hand-holding exercises I've seen in a while. It was really nice that Mars participated also, not just NTS and RRI. But
yeah, and it worked out pretty well. I think we learned a lot from it for sure.
We learned a lot, and we will take that data and then we'll sit there and we'll build upon it. I think we're going to be seeing some more of those type of joint exercises coming up this year. Anything else, John? Do you want to pick up from that, or do you want me to go on?
Keep going on till you're through talking about what's the subject.
Well, okay. So I was going to say the other thing that we've identified, ARES 2.0, the first real ARES mission statement or plan, if you will. It came out now. It's about 3 years old since it's come out. We are knowing it's well overdue for an update and a remake. So we're working on the next version of that to expect to see some updates on that, including updating the training matrix. Now, as you guys here in South Texas know, when we put out the West Gulf Division training matrix, we kind of took it from day 1 in ARES all the way up to you are willing and capable of jumping out of a flying Black Hawk with a repeater on your back and roll on the beach and come up with an HF station on the air. All right, that was the high end. So we've sat there and we wanted to actually focus on elite people who really were trained. So if we were called in an ARES matter, if there was another Puerto Rico situation, that we had people who were actually skilled and capable and stuff. So the training matrix that the league went with was basically ICS 100, 200, 700. We're done. Now, those are nice. I mean, you can't go with that, but really we need more training. We've got to be able to do more things. If you're going to actually respond, you've got to be able to more sit there and say, I can name the 5 branches of the ICS structure and we're done. Is that all you need to know? Well, no, it doesn't. And so we're going to be seeing maybe try to improve that, try to standardize a little bit more training and maybe build some more levels till we get up to that Black Hawk level at a national standard and stuff. So that's one of the other items that we've really focusing on too and stuff. And then I would like to see our South Texas, or I will just call it West Gulf, what we used to call the rapid response teams that we kind of had started calling our communication task forces. I'd like to kind of see us standardize at a national level. So again, if we need somebody, and if I call you, and regardless of whether you're here in South Texas or whether you're in Montana, we have a standard set of training, we have a standard set of skill sets and responses. And I know if I sit there and I do sit there and make you jump out of a C-130 over Haiti, I know that when you get down to the ground, you'll be ready to rock and roll, and you'll be able to pick up whatever thing you find on the ground and build an entire repeater system that you can get on the air in a couple of hours, right?
It's in Lee's case, he'll push you out of the C-130.
That's exactly right.
That's exactly right. Anyway, that's kind of where we're at. So again, thank you. When we are, guys, you're going to see more focus. You are going to see us actually, we're going to put some time into it. We're going to actually start to sit there and rebuild the program until it is what it was before. And to an extent, we will be the state-of-the-art envy of the world as far as how we do response.
And as part of that, since we're having to rebuild it, anyone who has input or wants to have input, you think we ought to be looking at something, I'll give it to Jimmy and Mike so they can put it up in the newsletter, how you get in touch with this committee, because we're building it from the ground up. It's been dead for too long. We're having to recreate everything. But after July, everything coming through, going to deal with MCOM NTS will be coming through this committee.
And I will take advantage of that, but I'll mention one of the things I'd like to see is in the Aries task books, I'd like to see an NTS component in the Aries task books, because that's how we recruit into the NTS, is through the people who are interested in MCOM and Aries.
Okay. Send that to us. Again, I'll give you
Will do.
and you can send it to me or Lee anyway. We'll see to it gets to the committee. And not only are we have created this new committee to deal with MCOM and NTS, we are revamping the entire structure of the league. The league was formed in 1914. The control documents are so old, they've got mold on them. We're having to completely rewrite the articles of incorporation, the bylaws, what are called standing orders, which are operational rules. That's having to be redone to bring the league up into the 21st century. It's a new league. It doesn't all the shiny stuff doesn't show yet. It will start showing. The website, which I will not describe in words it deserves because it would get us thrown off the air, is going to be redone. It will cost us probably $1 million to rewrite the website. And some of you who know how to create websites are choking on your coffee right now. The question is why? Because the amount of material the league has that you cannot get to, we can't get to, is huge. I forget, it's over 50,000 pages. And if you try to ever search for anything on the league's website, I'll buy you coffee and lunch if you can find it on the first pass. You'll note that the only search engine that works on the web is Google. That's because the people who created the new website, the people on the board, had no clue how websites worked. The contract to create the new website was 1 page. There was no deliverables, no timelines, and if any of you remember when it came up live, it crashed immediately. The search engine doesn't work. Even those of us who are on the board try to find something, we have as much trouble as you do. So it's going to have to be completely redone. It'll take over a year once we start, maybe a year and a half to do it. How many of you use Logbook of the World?
Me.
Okay, a few of you do. it is not as bad as the website, except on certain days when all of us who are using it want to curse it. But it was written as kind of a hobby when it was first created about 10, 12 years ago. The first programmers that were hired to write it quit 6 weeks, left. By the way, they left with the league's money too. So we had to start over. If any of you remember when it crashed during the Worldwide contest, in November of 2016? Anyone want to guess why the Logbook of the World crashed? You
Too many
tech
people
guys.
searching,
Pardon?
too many people trying to update at the same time.
No, that was what we first thought. When they wrote the Logbook of the World, they put a maximum number of QSOs in it.
Holy moly.
It hit max. The good news is whoever programmed put a do loop in it. When it hit max, it started looping. It didn't erase anything. And it took about half a day. One of our IT guys looked at it and went, that's stupid. It's looping. And then it dawned on him and immediately indexed the number of QSOs. We have fixed that little problem since. But when we started looking at it, because it hadn't been looked at in 10 years, there was no documentation, none, on the code. Everyone had to figure out by going back line by line. So we've tasked a group of programmers that we hired just to work on it to redo the interface because it's kludgy and to make it a little bit more friendly. But we've determined we can't fix it. The code is so poorly written. We can't fix it. We're going to rewrite it. So we're going to have to hire some more programmers and start on, it's got different names, Logbook 2.0, Project X, whatever you want to call it. That'll start probably by summer. That's going to cost us, early estimate, $600,000, maybe more. The intent is to make it more than just what it is. We want it to be the equivalent to the best logging programs you've got in the world and to be able to interface with some of those programs. So we've got two major software projects. One is the website, and part of that work has been ongoing behind the scenes. It's not ready for prime time yet. And then the Logbook of the World. Plus we're rewriting the software for the VE operation. So everything the league has been doing is being redone because it's been ignored for so long. It'll take us a couple of years to get most of this up to speed, but it's not what the league used to be. We are trying to get that done. We are burdened with C-19 that shut us down. We are rebuilding membership. When we raised the dues, we lost members, about 22,000, I think. Max membership was 175, and we're trying to build it back up to at least 175, if not 200. And again, it's strength in numbers. The more members we have, to be crass, the more money we've got, the more money we can put in the programs and the defense. There will be a membership drive coming out sometime after the summer, I think. And we'll be working on trying to get more money to the clubs who are bringing members in. Anyone tell me how much of our operational expenses are paid by memberships? Free guess.
Yeah.
48%.
Well, that's pretty close.
We spend about $15 million a year to operate. 48% of our income comes from memberships. The rest of it comes from 4 other major areas: the books we sell, the advertising in the magazines, donations, and returns off our investments. We've got an endowment of about $35 million, and most of that money is restricted. We can't spend it. We can spend the earnings off of about half of it, and that's an operational reserve. But it's a $15 million a year budget with 48% paid by membership. The rest has to come through the sale of books, advertising, or just donations. So if you send $1, it really counts. That's the reason the Diamond Club is being pushed, because that money is free operational money that we can spend on operations and programs. Anyone got any questions about the $35 fee we're all being honored to pay?
What was the thing about the Diamond Club?
The Diamond Club is a source of bringing donations in. There are different tiers of donations to the Diamond Club.
Okay.
And that is a donation program that is going to be more emphasis placed upon it. Again, because the monies that donated through Diamond Club are just donated freely. I mean, just $1. It provides operational expenses. On any given year, out of the $15 million budget, $1 million of it comes from donations. If you want to do that math in reverse, if we don't get the donations, we fall short every year $1 million. So donations, everyone thinks, sending $1 or $10 doesn't mean anything. It really does. All those little donations make it possible for us to keep operating. But we are also revamping our investment policies. A committee, the director out of New England and I formed a committee. It's looking at how we invest our money. Can we invest it better so that we can provide more benefits to the members? Can we broaden the programs we have? What can we do? So if you touch on anything with the league right now, it's being redone because it ignored for over 20 years.
You brought up.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You brought up the $35.
Yes, sir.
With that and the test fee, which is currently $15, does that mean that a new candidate or any candidate that comes in is going to be paying $50 up front?
Correct. That's the reason we fought it so hard. They originally were proposing 50, and 50 was a throwaway number. Those of us who are older than 16 and had licenses back in the pre-1988, we paid a license fee then. The reason we stopped paying license fees after 1988 because the FCC got too big for its britches. The FCC was entitled before then to set license fees for radio, telephone, TV stations, radio stations, didn't matter. They could set them at what they wanted. But the statutory authorization said they could set fees based on cost. They wanted more money. So they started increasing fees on multiple licenses, but were not based on cost of administering the license. There were 2 lawsuits filed. Both lawsuits won. The FCC lost both. They lost because they were charging more than it cost them to handle that license class. Congress got tired of the complaints, and in the rewrite of the Communications Act, decided that they were going to stop listening to complaints about the FCC, and Congress was going to set the fees. So in the 1988 Act, Congress set all the license fees for any class of radio license. In the original draft of the bill, we got to pay a license fee, except the Senate version didn't match the House version. When that happens, state level or federal level, a conference committee is formed and the House and Senate get together and try and make them bills match. There was a congressman on the conference committee who had a ham working on his staff. When he got ready to go to one of the conference committee meetings, he stopped and said, "Bill, what do you think I ought to do about this? What do you think I ought to try and change?" Being a ham, being cheap, he said, "Erase the amateur radio license fee." Okay. He went in the committee and he won. He stripped out the fees for us. So from 88 up until they passed the Ray-Baum Act and the FCC set the fees, we had no license fee. We had a vanity fee. If you remember when you asked for vanity call sign, you had to send a fee. You remember that stopped a number of years ago, what I think by 2015, Keith, if you remember correctly. The reason the FCC stopped charging us a vanity license fee is that if they didn't grant it, they had to send the money back. They found it was more expensive to send the money back than they were making. So they quit charging the fee. They're going to start charging the fee again, they'll collect it this time. But we weren't targeted. Congress got tired of setting the fees and went, "We're done. going to send it back to the FCC, but in the bill it says you can only do it on cost. And the first proposal was $50 fees for everybody, $170 for this. They were excessive fees, and they knew it. We argued when we filed an objection to it that they were placing, in some levels, an impossible burden on new members. $15 to take the exam, $50 to get the license. And there are people who don't have that money. But all we were able to do is cut it from 50 to 35. In Section 9A of the Act, there was a provision created by Congress that said the FCC had the right, still does, to waive any license fee. We argued that the benefit we provide in emergency communications, I forget, Lee, do you remember what the number is? How many millions of dollars we provide every year in services and equipment donated to the use of the states and countries?
It's greater than 25 million, easy.
Oh yeah, it's way over 25. It's a staggering number. That alone justified that we should be treated differently because no other license class was donating their services. No other license class is mandated by federal law to be made part of emergency planning because FEMA made that a rule. Didn't matter. The Wireless Bureau that governs the amateur radio didn't set the fees. The fees were set by the budgetary people, the bean counters. They didn't care about what we did. They didn't care about what radio stations, TV stations, satellites, anybody did. They were looking for money. But we got it to 35. So we are stuck with it. We're back to where we were pre-1988. Keith, you remember what the fees were before 1988? Keith, you have any idea? No, I couldn't remember what they were either.
What was it in Confederate script? What the?
I wish it were. We've offered to pay it in Confederate script. They won't let us do that either. So you're going to see a lot of the IT stuff being redone. You're seeing programs redone, new people hired to provide support to clubs and different activities. Hamfest, they're dead everywhere. The first Hamfest in the West Gulf we think that will occur is Ardmore, Oklahoma in October. Maybe Belton after that. By that time, enough people would be vaccinated. Maybe there's a chance. I think Huntsville in Alabama is going to be held before then. Lee?
John, I thought Texas City stepped up and said they were doing theirs in July.
They've asked for permission to do it. They've been given permission, but it's unclear from talking to them if they will do it. So Texas City might be the first. Summerfest won't happen. Oklahoma City won't happen. I think, Jimmy, your club just tried to see if you could move your Hamfest to September, but couldn't find a facility.
Right. Yeah, it's not going to happen this year.
And as all of you know, Hamcom is dead. It is not probable that it will come back with the same group that they'd like to, but I don't think it will. And when Hamcom failed, there was an immediate discussion between me and a number of other folks and our new CEO. Excuse me. Hamcom is the 5th largest Hamfest in the country. There is an effort undergoing right now to see if we can put a group together to revive Hamcom. It may be called something else, but to effectively recreate Hamfest in June next year. We can't do it. It's too close this year. But we're looking, a number of clubs have stepped up and said, they'd like to help. We may have some vendors helping. We don't know. We're just at the beginning stages, but we are going to make an effort. But it will be, may not be completely league-led, but it's going to be, the league's going to be heavily involved in trying to recreate it. Did someone have their hand up? Did I miss somebody? I'm sorry.
John,
Sure.
Mark Brantana, N5PRD. Hey, not to pile on, but I just when you talked about the two offers, I said, oh great. While John's talking, I'll go and take up 3 years of membership right now, and which I did. I had a heck of a time finding the renewal page. I had to do searches, and even the searches didn't work. It doesn't seem to know the word renewal. but I did finally get there. And when I got there, I signed. I noticed that there were anyway, yada yada yada. I signed up for 3 years at $140, but I don't know what it is I'm getting because I don't know if when my QST magazine is going to run, whether I'm going to get it.
It rolls over.
Yeah, because I noticed that for the first year, year one, if you renew for 1 year, you can renew for 1 year, or you can renew for 1 year and get your magazine. It doesn't have something parallel like that for the 3 year
For
stuff.
3 years, you'll get the magazine.
Cool.
It's guaranteed.
Anyway, just wanted to throw that out as an example.
What you're seeing is what we have been trying to fix for over 10 years. When I say we, it's a group of the board that has been complaining. There was a running joke for a long time until we fired a bunch of people.
Yeah.
If the board wanted to do something and involve technology, the running joke was it won't get done because it involves IT time. Because the IT department was nice guys, but not competent. Nothing got done. There was resistance to headquarters to change. And to be fair, it's resistance at headquarters level to change. And I'm not picking on any one employee. It was kind of an institutional thing. Sumner was opposed to change. So we were stuck with a website that has been out of date for 100 years. It's written so poorly. When they wrote it, it was a custom management system. They didn't use an existing program. They created, the people they hired created one from whole cloth. If you were to take a web page and shrink it, at the bottom of that web page, the name Fathom, Fathom, would appear. Fathom hard-coded their name into the web pages. And it's a hard-coded site. So anytime we make a change, it's a major effort just to change any page. It's not like Joomla or WordPress. You go in and fix it and you're done. It is a major, I think the term is bitch. But what you're seeing in just renewal, it's kludgy. It doesn't work well. You can go to any club site, it's written better than this thing. So that's the reason we're going to have to spend a lot of money to fix it. But thank you for renewing, and we'll make sure you get the QST. Unfortunately, you don't have any puppies. We're out of puppies. But.
No, I want my two. I want my gifts. All right, I'm sure I'll get them. Thank you.
I'll make certain it's not a date with Lee. I'll promise it's not.
Yeah, I have a quick question about QST. This
Yes,
is
sir.
K5MGJ. If I'd like to have a membership where I just get the digital copy of QST and not the paper copy, are there any future plans for something like that?
Yes. There are. It's possible to do it now. It's hard to find on the website. It's possible to do it now. We thought that a lot of people would take us up on just doing digital because if you look at it, there's a slight discount for doing that. But very, very few people have opted into it. But if you want to do that and you can't find it, send me an email and I'll get headquarters to get with you and we can fix it. I mean, a lot of times when we want to fix things, we have to call headquarters and have the programmers fix it. It's that bad.
Okay, thanks.
And when you renew your membership, you've got an option of QST or On the Air magazine, and you now get it, National Contest Journal and QX free, digitally. Not that we don't send it out by print because it's too expensive, but you get access to the digital copies.
K5VGM here. Could I make a couple comments?
Sir.
First, being a broadcaster and having participated in a couple of paging auctions, and now seeing the auctions that are going on as they're auctioning off huge blocks of video of spectrum for the wireless people, it would seem with those auctions that they should be flushing money.
Basically what?
They should have all kinds of money, more money than they could use, what the bids are going for a block of cell phones.
They do, but there's an unlimited amount of desire for money. What we have in terms of blocks of frequencies, UHF, VHF, and HF, it's billions of dollars that if we owned it, we could sell it for that.
Well, yeah, but what's something like the 50 megacycles at 600 megacycles, or megahertz worth.
1 kilohertz is almost worth $1 billion by itself, depending on where it's located.
Yeah. Okay. Had another question. QEX, I really enjoy that magazine, but one of the disadvantages is there's not the ability to go and search and find a copy of it. Or has that changed with them putting it out every month as a digital?
It's a defect in the website. We're trying to get all the magazines searchable. So it's not easy to do, but when we revamp that site or the website, you'll be able to do that.
That would be good. At this point right now, you can search it. They'll tell you where it is. You go to your file cabinet there, and what do you know? You don't have that copy. It was before you started receiving them.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some really good gems in there. There's a lot of stuff that I just say, okay, somebody else knows it. I don't understand that, but there's some real gems in there at times.
That's part of that 50,000 pages. We have all of this stuff. It can't be reached because the website's broken. It's broken when we got it. So, and talk about spectrum, you're auctioning the frequencies. As you know, 3.3 to 3.5 are the auction. Congress didn't authorize, they ordered the FCC to auction off those frequencies. And we were secondary to the military and a few other people. The military objected just as we did to the loss of those frequencies. The military lost. What we have been doing is working with the FCC to let us keep using 3.3 to 3.4, maybe to 3.425, because they are not going to auction off all of those frequencies immediately. It may be 2 years. And some of those frequencies, even when they're used by commercial users, will not be something that we can interfere with. So we have a petition filed by our general counsel, not general counsel, but FCC counsel. And we've been working behind the scenes to get the FCC to grant us continued secondary use of 3.3 to at least 3.4, maybe to 3.425. They've actually indicated they're interested in it. As we pointed out, since they're not going to auction that area, that part of the frequency off, it's going to lie dormant. So we may be able to get, maybe by summer, maybe by fall, permission to continue to use it. We'll still have to transition out over time, but we think we may get a chance to use it for at least another 2 years.
So we won't have anything in the C-band at that point?
Nope, not at all.
That's a disappointment.
I mean, there's still no resolution on 60 meters. As some of you know, we've got access now to 5 channels and 100 watts. We've been asking for more allocation and permission to use more power. There is an effort within certain government agencies to limit our maximum power to 9 watts.
On that channel or everywhere?
On every 60-meter channel.
Oh, okay.
When we stopped choking on our coffee and asked why, and I met with one of the guys involved in this government, they said, you interfere with us. Even though you're in a channel, you've got a max wattage, you are interfering with us, you're supposed to not interfere. There are some operators that when they're asked to shut up, move, won't. Well, I asked the question you would ask. When you say we, who do you mean?
Yeah.
This was done over lunch. The response was, we. No, that's not going to work. Come on. Who is we? And
what are they doing with the channel?
Well, at that point, there was a big grin. There were a group of us sitting there. And he said, amateur radio is not the only user of that band. And there are folks who, in certain circumstances, cannot tolerate interference because it's a matter of life and death. There are government agencies using 60 meters worldwide. Agencies operations, and it works real well for them, same as it does for us. And they're the ones trying to get everyone out of that because it's so effective. The response was, are you talking about tier 1 units or 3-letter agencies? And at that point, the grin got bigger and went, we're done talking to you. So,
That's what I was saying. We was one too many letters.
yeah.
Well, you know, I was at a conference where we were discussing channels for wireless mics, and somebody stood up and said that you ought to go use the 900 meg channel, the 902, 928, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know what? You move up there, you don't know what interference is like between the power companies reading meters up there. You just don't know when they're going to turn on, start reading meters. Some of the there's some ISDN up there, or not ISDN, what is it? The industrial uses where like heating and whatnot, where it's not even a communications function, but it's one of those channels I think are a little above 20 meters also. But I said, you know, just don't go there and you'll be better off. And I don't know what they ever did with it, but I did a vehicle location system in that band, and we were constantly doing what we called RF busting, the devices that monitor sales, you know, the
Right.
catch you going out the door with something you didn't check out, and those sort of things. They're all over the place. Those guys don't really care because they're not a receive communications kind of situation.
Yeah, they're unlicensed, so they don't care. Jimmy, let me ask you.
There's actually a group out of San Antonio that's building a pretty nice linked 900 megahertz setup across the state.
Are they?
Yeah.
I imagine when you get outside of the big cities, it's probably wide open, which is probably true of anything above about 25 megs.
Yeah, they just recently put one of the repeaters on the air out here in Katy.
Did they?
Yeah.
What's the input?
I'd have to look it up. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't have a radio for it.
But it's a 900 input?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
That's
I have
interesting.
So I have a question about Aries.
Yes.
I'm new to Aries, and you guys are talking about wanting to update the training and that sort of thing. And I was wanting, I went through the was the IC 100 or whatever course the other night. So if I'm interested in getting involved, should I go ahead and continue with the existing training, or should I do something else?
No,
We can get into this, but yes, the answer is yes. Continue with the training. The need to take the ICS courses will continue. But Lee, you want to add to that?
Well, I was going to say, Carl, if you talk to your EC, or if you get a chance to talk to Jeff Walter, there is a formal West Gulf Division training matrix that has been adopted for many years now, and it is much more intense. It's not just 100, 200, 700, ECO1's in there, EC16. We talk about Skywarn training. We've talked about actual hands-on demonstrating your skills, like being able to sit there and actually program an HT or something like that. So the West Gulf Matrix is actually a lot more than just the ICS courses. It was really designed for you to sit there and learn useful skills that you're actually going to use in an operation and stuff, and then demonstrate those skills. So if not, if you go to the arlstx.org, go over to Aries, there is a copy of the training matrix, and you can see the different levels and the different types of training that we have in there. And you're, I'm not sure which of the four groups you're in, but your EC, well, there can sit also pointed to you, or the DEC, somebody pointed to you. But anyway, it's posted up there, and it's a lot more into it. We were, by the way, where that came from, I just point out, for some of you guys, you know, we've been doing this since 2000. When I put this together, I looked at things like ECO1, ECO2, and ECO3, which were there at the time, and then ECO16, it came later. But I also looked at PR101, and then I looked to see what Mars was doing. And I sat there and I looked to see if there was anything from Mars that I thought maybe we should be able to emulate. And then we sat down and Paul, we went and looked at COML and COMT. And so we try to kind of maybe borrow, I'll use the word borrow.
Deal.
Steal, plagiarize. But anyway, we look for ideas and say, hey, you know what? This would be pretty good for us. We should add this in there because this is pretty good training. This is more than just being able to sit there and point out to where does the logistic officer sit and where does the operational officer sit. We said we want to get a little bit above that. And so that's been in place now since 2009. That's certainly not something that's new. We've adopted that many years ago. And so I would just say, get a hold of that task book, because there is a task book that goes with it. And that would be your guide.
And I was going to say, Carl, if you're in District 14 and you log into the site, you're on that task book. And that's going to get you where you need to go. So just continue on.
How do I know what district I'm in? I'm in Brazoria County in Pearland area.
So the districts are on the South Texas ARRL website.
Okay.
Go to the South Texas ARRL website, and on that website, it will tell you based in your county who your EC is and determine if they're using the task book. Because if they're using that task book, you're going to get a very broad, very good training all the way up through COML if you want to go there, which is like go to a place class. So you'll be in good shape.
All right. Thanks.
Jimmy, we're past 8 o'clock. We'll stay here and answer questions as long as everyone wants to ask. But as a courtesy, do you want to run Lee and I off since it's 8 o'clock?
I mean, as long as people want to hang around, they're more than welcome to, and we can continue questions going for a little while. I mean, if anybody wants to drop off, they can do that too. You guys can stay as long as you want.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Hey, John, this is Rick, W5RH. Thanks for doing this. Really informative. I got a couple of general questions. What do you hear from David Woolweaver? Haven't heard his name or anything for a few years. I was just wondering what his situation was. He was always a good guy to us. The second question is, y'all sit around up there, and I'm sure you go out for a few beers or whatever. What do you talk about ham radio being 5 or 10 years from now? What does it look like then? You know, just hopefully I'll still be around to enjoy it 5 or 10 years from now, and just want to know what I'm in for.
Well, if you buy a life membership, we'll guarantee you live 5 years.
Thanks.
The David Woolweaver question first. David and Janine still live in Harlingen. When David stepped down as director, we elected him president of the ARRL Foundation. The foundation gives out scholarships, as I think most of you know, and grants. I believe its endowment's about $6 million. And I think they got about 8 members of the committee of the foundation, and he's president of it. And he's been really effective. We brought in an additional $200,000 of outside money. We may have an additional $400,000 of outside money for scholarships. But he is still above ground, still active, still happy. At least he's happy until he has to take his German Shepherd to the vet. Then he gets unhappy because it's expensive. What is it going to look like in 5 years? If we had a crystal ball, we would be all rich right now. But we are actually working on a 5-year plan to answer that question. There's been no advanced strategic planning for the league, serious strategic planning for, again, at least 25, 30 years. Committee has already been formed. We're looking at that. And we hope to have that plan completed by the end of the year. And we'll be able to tell you what we, the league, want the league to be doing and what we want amateur radio to look like. Obviously, we don't want to lose any more frequencies. That's kind of number one item. We're going to be fighting over it. And I'm going to go back. I'll keep going on that question, but I'll just make a point here. One of the things that we have insisted that we start doing that we never did under Sumner is start being active legislatively. In Texas, if you remember back in 2007, we formed a Texas legislative group the first task for the first, I think, 6 years was to kill every cell phone bill that came in. Then we started passing legislation beneficial to amateur radio. But at the federal level, there was opposition to participating with Congress. So since 2014, we've been working on trying to pass legislation that Congress, that will continue, because if we don't have a better presence at Congress and at the FCC, that 5-year look at amateur radio will change, because there's too much money. There's too much interest in the frequencies. If we are not more active, which we're intending to be, in protecting those frequencies, we'll lose them. And that's the reason you'll see a hard drive to get more members. I mean, every member is $49. And again, it won't pay for operations, but if we pick up another 50,000 members, we pick up another $2 million, which goes straight to the bottom line that we can use on these programs. Not just salaries. It's not going to go that. It's going to go to what we can do. We met in June of 19. We being the executive committee, because I was on the executive committee then, and I'm on it again. We reinstituted what had been occurring years before. That is meetings in Washington with all the major federal agencies. That had been abandoned also. When we met with FEMA, NTIA, just go down the list of who we met with, they made the comment that were we not to be more active, amateur radio would cease to exist. So what we look like is going to depend upon how active we are, we being the league, active at Congress and the FCC. So you'll see on the legislative front, that will continue. We'll start doing more lobbying with the FCC. But just secondly, but what component, what do we want it to look like? What do we want the clubs to look like? That's part of this new club coordinator that I've persuaded the board to get set up. How do we grow the clubs? The backbone of the league are the clubs. If the clubs cease to exist, the league's going to go away. So we need to strengthen and expand the clubs in terms of membership and their ability to attract and keep their members. So it's a moving target, but check with me in a year. We'll have that plan, I think, in writing, and we can give it to you. Lee, you had a comment?
Well, I was
Very
going to
good.
I was going to say, if I can add to one thing that we have begun to see, you know, for a long, long time, again, we brought up earlier, when all else fails. Well, what we find, you guys, you know, down here, because we've gone through Harvey, we've gone through other things aren't failing per se anymore. All these different safeties, all these things are hardened. 911 systems are staying up. The other communications are staying up. So we are kind of going to see over the years, I think we're going to be migrating to both the concept of not when it fails, but what do we do before it fails? What can we help with that? Because can we help prepare? Can we help harden? Can we help plan better systems using our techniques? But also we're starting to see more of a trend toward, well, it's not my communication is down, but can you guys provide disaster intelligence? Can you provide situational awareness so we know how bad is? People sitting in the SOC down in Austin want to know boots on the ground. Give us some information, help us make a more informed decision. So we aren't really going to be looking forward to doing this in the future. I think you're going to see us having a mission change, if you will, to do that. And I'll just throw something out here the other day. Our little friend Elon, that's become a new Texan down here, is bringing in all his stuff. You know, he's throwing up the Starlink system. Pretty soon there's going to be internet mesh globally before he's done, and everybody that has any type of small system. So it's not going to be so much, again, oh yeah, the 911 went down, the public safety radio went down. It's going to be more, no, our communication get down, but we don't have this information. We need more stuff. We need more proof grounding. And so you're going to start to see a paradigm shift over the years that our mission is going to change and our approach is going to have to change. That's looking at it from the Aries point of view to do that. Carl, by the way, you're in District 1 and Mark Taylor is your EC.
Well, I appreciate both of your answers. Thank you very much.
And to add what Lee is saying, there are ongoing discussions about this. There are gaps in emergency response. They don't have enough responders to do one or the other, and the situational awareness is big. I mean, if you look at this last ice storm, I mean, the state start. Even though a lot of communication systems stayed up, they didn't have people in the field who could provide the information. I mean, if you look at the Cajun Navy, they come organized and they've got a task. So what Lee's talking about is we may be looking at forming a subset or a part of areas or operational units with or without Black Hawk helicopters that are going to do just what Lee talked about. We will have a different set of tasks. What makes us unique is we have an independent communications ability. We don't need whatever the state or the feds have. We can operate, but link to those systems and provide them with either that situational awareness, or we're going to have rescue teams. I mean, there's been a discussion that maybe we ought to have something like Cajun Navy, that we can go in certain circumstances. They're trained to go and help people, again, because there are huge gaps in the system. But go ahead.
Another comment on that is the other thing we provide, yes, they have hardened systems, and yes, they have capabilities within those systems, but what they don't have is the ability to staff those systems when you have to staff up large with trained communicators. And that's what you see if you go to TranStar. The number of trained communicators is their problem, not the systems they're communicating on. So, you know, moving Aries to being able to operate in systems that are not traditionally amateur radio, but you have the skill set to be able to communicate and pass traffic. At the end of the day, if you know how to pass NTS traffic, it really doesn't matter in an emergent situation whether you're doing so over amateur radio or you're doing so over somebody else's system, right? It's the skill set of being able to pass the traffic that's important, efficiently, quickly, accurately, all the things you need. Does that make sense, John?
It does, and I will tell you that there have been discussions, Lee and Paul. Was Paul with you, or did you do it yourself? You initiate discussions with sheriffs about possibly coming up with joint teams so that we would have a broader access to communications ability.
That's correct.
Ron is also talking about, if you look at the FEMA designations, having more what's called RADO skills, radio operator skills under ICS, which makes us more useful to the served agency because we understand we get trained on how they do stuff. So if I do have to be pulled in to be a supplemental, be a force multiplier, I know what the heck the acronyms are when somebody comes up and asks me to do something, at minimum, let alone how to use the stuff. And so,
you know what form they want and all that stuff, because the skills of actually communicating are the same. I don't care if it's on an NTS radiogram or a Mars comm, right? It's the same skill.
Hey, Ron, it's Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm experiencing the same thing. In Civil Air Patrol with our HF nets, I find that our ham radio operators that are involved in emergency services are much better handlers of our messages than people who have never had that experience.
Yeah, that's exactly the point I'm making, is we can offer service to anybody who needs it as a function of capability to communicate effectively, quickly, and reliably. Doesn't matter what the system is you're on to do that.
Did you have a question, Mark?
Yeah, let me do two things. Let me tag on to that. When this pandemic hit, I was working as a technology specialist for a church, and all of a sudden I've got 60 people on a Zoom conference, and they're all wondering how to handle the thing. So I was operating that thing as if it were a ham radio net. These are just skill sets. Hey, when you get to it, I'd like to hear something about how we're attracting women to, because I'm seeing 40 guys here, but what we might be doing to attract more women, because we got some great women in our club here locally, and I wonder why they just don't come out. Anyway, when you get to it, we're doing other discussion here at the time, I guess.
Let me try and answer that, and then Lee, you had a question, or you were going to make a comment. There is part of the planning for what we do to expand membership there is a focus on diversity, and we have a number of strong women's groups around the country. We're trying to provide more support for them and expand it. Why do they not come out? Because they're in the minority. There are all the guys here. There are a couple of ladies out in West Texas that are some of the most skilled operators out in West Texas, and they're not shy about coming out. But there are a lot of new hams that are women are just intimidated by a room full of guys. That comes down to the club making those people welcome. I forget how many clubs I've visited over the years. In some clubs, a new person walks in and they're a member of the family. People go talk to them, try and get them involved, introduce them to others. And I've been in other clubs when I was a new ham just getting started. I'd walk in. If I'd shown up on fire, nobody would have talked to me. And in other clubs, people maybe who came up, asked me what I was interested in, introduced me to other people, called me after I left the meeting. So it's trying to get people to stay, regardless of gender, is an effort of how friendly the club can be. And that's not a negative comment on BVARC. It's just what we see. There needs to be an effort. Some of the, a couple of clubs in Dallas do this very well. They put on essentially ladies' nights. They hold special functions targeting all the women that are hams in the area, whether they're members of the club or not. It makes them feel more welcome. It takes a great deal of effort to do it.
Yeah, I agree, and we've got some affiliated members who, of course, who do not have ham licenses, but no, it's not unique to us. But behind the scenes, I mean, I'm dealing with 3 great ladies right now, and that's about half the people I'm dealing with, and yet, anyway, it was just a question. Thank you.
But that's part of what the club coordinator is supposed to do. Philippe, you had a question?
Yes, good evening. I heard earlier somebody mention what's going to be the ham radio in next 5 to 10 years. My question is, what do we do to attract young people for this hobby?
That is a constant issue. And it's a constant question we try to answer. You've got the young that are below 18. You've got, still call it young, 18 to their 20s. It's not that difficult sometimes if you have the right programs to get those under 18 interested. I mean, it's the standard 6-year-old passes extra exam. But unfortunately, once you get past, say, 12 years old, whether you're male or female, something interferes. If you're a guy, girls interfere. If you're a girl, the guys interfere. Everyone gets interested in the other group, and people drop out. The most fertile group we've seen in terms of recruiting are those in their 30s, male or female. They're out of school, they're more settled, they're looking for something, particularly if you bring technology into it. We picked up a lot of folks in the Austin area when we started talking about how can you use computer skills and do digital work with ham radio. We had a bunch of people, IBM, TI, and the others that joined the local clubs immediately because that was what they were interested in. So it is hard to attract and keep those under 18. You can attract them. I mean, our scholarship program targets that. But then when you get into college and people drop out because they don't have the time. It doesn't mean we're going to ignore them. We have special programs working with colleges right now, trying to expand the amateur radio clubs in those colleges or establish them and help, particularly in the engineering and science departments, to reach out to those students and bring them in. But it comes down to money to fund the programs. People to do that work who want to do that reach out, and then money to fund their operations. That's one reason we're trying to increase membership and earnings. But there's no magic formula. We keep looking for one. If every other board meeting, that's one of the topics in the meetings. How do we do this? We find small solutions that work in particular areas, but no overall solution. But it will be a component of the membership outreach when we start again. Because
Have you had any connection?
if we get them young and they quit, that's okay. There's another large group of hams that are those who were early licensees, and whether it's boys, girls, college, or whatever, dropped out. When they retire or get close to retirement age, they come back. That is a huge number of people coming back to the hobby. So if we can get them young, get them interested, even if they drop out, we'll pick them up 20 years later. I'm sorry, I missed someone with a question.
I'm sorry, John, I thought you had paused. Yeah, I was wondering if you know, in Texas has a big Project Lead the Way initiative. I taught engineering there at Travis High School for a year, and these kids come up with some stuff. The senior year, they pick their project, and all I do is I'm their client. I don't do anything. I just sit there and grade papers for other classes, you know. But they come up with some fantastic stuff. You know, it's all about engineering, and you know, that might be something. I'm sure you guys have already made some connections with them at University of Texas.
The club is still active at UT. One of the programs that we're trying to expand, if we can fund it, is the Teacher Institute. We bring teachers in from around the country and introduce them to radio and train them. They may not be licensed, but we train them so they can go back to their schools and teach. And Gregory, you had your hand up? Lee, you did, I think.
You covered it.
Okay.
So I had a comment on exactly that on the outreach program. I will tell you that when I got my ticket in 1993 in Virginia, I went to one club meeting and I never went back. And I never went anywhere near an amateur radio club after that until I joined BVARC. And the primary reason was that club in Virginia in 1993 was a bunch of 80-meter curmudgeons who did not want to,
Strangers.
didn't want to talk to anybody who was not in their little clique. You know what I mean?
No, I've seen that.
And what BVARC has is programs and interest and things like this, where we get to talk to the director of the West Gulf Division and all of this stuff. And so I think if you went and looked at the clubs that are successful and growing and doing that, they have training and they have guys like Rick who will help you with an antenna at any time and all of that stuff. What is the league going to do anything to try to kind of make that a standard for how an ARL affiliated club works?
That's part of the reason I created the club coordinator. One of the, when I became director, I did something that hadn't been done for years, and that's I started bringing the officers of the clubs in and go, okay, what do you want? What can we do? What are we not doing? What are we screwing up? And that's where the club coordinator thing came up, because it became the people's clubs, those who had experience in running the clubs, said, we don't get help anymore. We need to know how to do it. We change officers and the new officers don't know how to run a club. We form a club. Should it be a 501c3, 501c4? Should it be nonprofit? Should it be incorporated? Should it be an LLC? One of the things that's going to come out of this is actually a club handbook that will set guidelines. If you want to attract members, here's what you should have in a club. You should have a dedicated group that's going to reach out to new members, people who like talking to new members. Here are programs that have proven to work. Here's how you set this up. Yes, it'll be part of that club coordinator and enhanced support for the clubs. So not every club will adopt it. There are curmudgeon clubs now.
And I'm not begrudging them their little clique. I'm just saying that you're not going to get new members in that club because you pretty much have to be around for 40 years and get to be 80.
I mean, Steve Smith and our Texas section manager and I were visiting clubs. It was visiting clubs in small towns that hadn't been visited in a long time. And we went to one club, I won't tell you where it was. And when we walked in, we could hear the music from Deliverance. We sat close to the door, trust me.
We saw that up here when one of our clubs kind of decided to embrace the non-people. You don't know CW, we don't need to talk to you. Their membership grew quietly. Ron, I have to ask real quickly, you weren't talking about RATS, were you? Richmond Amateur Telecommunications Society, by any chance?
I know where it is, and I was in Tidewater, but yeah, I was the Tidewater Amateur Club, which tried to emulate Richmond. Let's just say.
Because I was in Rats during 94, 95. That's why I asked.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I hope that you kind of changed that, because in '93 Tidewater was not very fun. Let's just say that. Not for a new guy, not for a guy in the Navy, not for a guy who wanted to do MCOM. It was about CW on 80, period.
Yeah, ours, they were focused a lot on de-expeditions. I actually saw some really cool presentations on de-expeditions and stuff, especially to Pitcairn Island and stuff. So for a new guy that really doesn't know anything, to sit there and see some of that cool stuff, actually a lot more interesting than figuring out how to sit there and strip coax and build a dive pool, is to sit there and see some of this other stuff. So
I don't disagree with you, but I happened to be in the Navy on submarines at the time, and a de-expedition is the last thing I ever wanted to do. Got to do them for real, thanks. No.
You got to do it as part of your duty cycle, yes.
Well, John and Lee, I want to thank you guys for participating tonight. We've gone a little over a half hour over. Like I said, I'm fine with people staying as long as they want, but I figure you guys may have some other things you want to do. So I want to give you guys an opportunity to bow out now, or you can hang around longer if you want.
Well, we'll let everybody go home. We'll stay if you want. Next month, by the way, if I understand, Jimmy, you've got Paul Gilbert coming to speak.
Yeah, I think Paul's going to be talking to us next month. So we'll have more ARL information on the MCOM side next month.
And feel free to tell him when he shows up that Lee and I said it's his fault.
Thanks, John. I think we're in good hands.
Okay. Again, Lee and I both appreciate you taking time to invite us and talk to us, and for the input. It helps a lot in what we do.
Hey, just talking to the ARRL is a nice thing now. You know, it's a new thing.
KF5WFB with a question when y'all finish.
Go ahead.
And as far as I know, with women, also one of the challenges is to bring more people with disabilities. In this case, blind or partially sighted people into the hobby as well. Provide with the capabilities, radios and other equipment that we can use. That, and also with the website, just to make it more accessible to people that use things like screen magnifiers, screen readers, that sort of thing, and to bring us into the mainstream of the hobby as well.
There is a component of one of the working groups we have that's been formed since we came up with the new CEO that is specifically targeted at the members or non-members yet who are handicapped on site. Website is part of that. Training for them. Everything you're talking about is part of that we're looking at working on.
Sure. Thank you.
And with the digital modes, we can go after some of the people who are hearing impaired as well.
Yes, we can.
Because, for years and years, you couldn't be a ham radio operator if you couldn't hear, but now you can.
And we have some people connected to the board that are either they're hearing impaired or they're sight impaired. And they have been working with some of the board members on this subcommittee.
Perfect.
Thank you.
John?
Sir?
This is Bill Cordell. I wanted to thank you and Lee personally for doing all what you do. You have more patience than Job. So thank you for everything. It was a great presentation.
Don't say that to some judges because they're certain that I'm neither Job nor I have any patience, but okay. Thank you.
Okay. 7-3, guys.
73.
Okay, Lee, and I'll let you go unless there are any more questions, but we'll come back anytime you want us to. And you're free to contact either one of us anytime you want if you got a question. That's not a problem.
Thanks again, guys. You have a good night.
Oh, you be safe.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Take care.